So I'm here with Tony Andrews from Function One, but more importantly today he is a guru of good sound quality. He's on a mission to make us understand what's happened to sound quality and why we need to take more care over our approach to it as DJs and as producers and as music lovers. Now Tony is going to help Digital DJ Tips to come up with some definitive answers to this problem for the working DJ, for people who work digitally and for people who just want to sound better, because the question you guys always ask us is, why do our digital sets sometimes sound worse than the CD guys who play before us? And Tony is very well placed to give us the answers to that. But Tony's also been doing this long enough to see how this has changed, and he's seen what he considers to be a descent into an abyss of bad sound. And so I'm going to ask him today to explain how that's happened as a kind of prelude to us writing this article to help you guys do a better job of making your sets sound great. So Tony, what's the problem and where did it come from?
What's the problem? Well, the problem is that actually digital, to get right, is there's a lot more processes involved than there ever was with analog, and that tends to make people feel that analog's better. But
so by analog you mean vinyl and CDs?
Vinyl, yeah, to some extent it's CDs. I mean, when CDs first came out, they didn't sound that great because it's a different technique, and it took a while for people to learn how to get that. There's obviously a kind of sound that people find pleasant and they can live with, and it's involving. A lot of it comes from a lot of the bad digital sound is to do with bad sound cards, bad samples in the first place, gain structure that's fallen apart.
So by gain structure you mean kind of the way the levels are set on the mixer?
Definitely keep it out of the red. But at the same time, because it's digital, you've got to try and use all the bits, because the bits are distributed across the dynamic range, and if you're too quiet, you're not using them. So your 24-bit can turn into an 8-bit just by not having enough level. On the other hand, if you go over, it's going to sound pretty crap, because digital distortion is pretty horrific. So another thing is file formats. So whatever you're making music with, if you can get an original, say, WAV file of high resolution. So talking about resolution, a so-called high quality MP3 is 320 kilobits per second. So if you look at a CD, which is still not adequate but is way better, that's 1411, I think, something like that. So you've only got to do the maths, and you see straight away a CD is about 5 times more information. And actually, to satisfy, shall we say, the brilliance of human hearing, you need about 96 kilohertz, 24-bit depth, and that will be as good as anything analog. I mean, just recently we've started playing, when we do demonstrations, we use a laptop. We use a very straightforward, simple file player. We're on PC, so we're using Fubar, because it's apart from the fact that it's free, it doesn't do anything to the files other than play them, and it keeps it nice and clean. And since we've been doing that, my wife, who's just by osmosis has become quite tuned into things, actually said she preferred it coming off the CDs. And I'm thinking about this, because to me it sounds cleaner, but you can just begin to hear the edginess that you get when the resolution's not up to it. When we go to 24-bit depth, 96, she's quite happy with it, and it sounds much smoother and there's much more information. So this is just one example.
So file, I mean, we always say, if you're using 320 MP3s, you're probably going to be all right. But we also, and you're saying that, you can notice a difference between those and WAV files and so on.
Certainly you can.
But we also discussed before hitting record on the video how it's not only about file formats, is it? And
No.
that's just one part of the problem, if you like, that digital DJs have today in getting stuff right, because there's other stuff which they used to take for granted, which is gone, which is not. We were talking about how in studios everything was produced professionally 20-30 years ago. It had to be, you couldn't do it at home. All that's changed, so it's kind of a safety net being removed from underneath people's feet, and when you're out there buying music, you can't guarantee a certain quality that maybe you could 20 years ago. And again, that's something I wanted to ask you about, because you've seen it all change as a professional over that time period.
True.
So we talked about the fact that I can make a tune in my bedroom and I can put it onto Beatport and you can buy it, and you might be under the assumption that that tune's going to sound good just because you've purchased it, and that's not the case, is it?
Sadly not. And Beatport these days do offer WAV files anyway. They're a trifling amount more expensive, but it's well worth doing. The thing is, the MP3 only exists because of the World Wide Web and the shall we say, back in the 90s, low bandwidth. And storage was really expensive. Well, I mean, those days are way behind us, so effectively it's just become a bad habit. And I mean, there's no real reason why we should be using MP3s at all. I mean, they're one factor, as you were saying, in the whole story. Say gain structure, good quality converters. There's a lot of sound cards out there that are almost unusable, some of which cost quite a bit of money. It's quite hard sifting through what's right and wrong. I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to say anything particularly commercial, but we've discovered that Echo are making the best sound card for the money probably on the planet. The audiophile is fantastic. The converters are great. Either way round. So if I do quite a bit of, shall we say, capturing off vinyl, and I use the analog to digital converters in that, and I get a really good WAV file.
No, it's fine to mention stuff. My first card was an Echo card, my first DJ card. It was a little PC one that plugged into the side of my PC, and it sounded great. I concur. So we're going to go into this in a lot more detail in our article. Tony's going to help me to put it together, and we're going to come up with kind of a definitive list to help DJs. A pragmatic list.
I'll do my best.
We're not going to tell you have to do this and you have to do that, but I think the point is going to be to make people aware of what to look out for, isn't it? And to make people more literate about sound quality, so they can make informed decisions for themselves. If you're DJing on a mobile DJ, on a cheap PA rig, in a crappy pub, maybe you don't need to go to the extent of remastering everything as WAV files and buying the most expensive sound card on the planet, but you still need to get your gain structure right, and you still need to be aware of where these things might be letting you down. I guess that's kind of part of what we're going to try and get across.
Absolutely, and also perhaps a more fundamental question is, why is it important anyway? And the thing is, if the sound's harsh or confused, you disengage from it. It doesn't involve people. When it's clear and lucid, people's minds can go further into it. And actually, that's the real joy of it.
It's the reason DJs are there as well. It's music, isn't it? It's what we're all about.
It is worthwhile, and it's just like the difference between processed cheese and a real one. I think we'd all prefer reality. So,
and if you prefer Dairy Lee, stop watching now. You're not our kind of DJs. No, only joking. Well, thank you very much, Tony. I look forward to the article, and keep an eye out for it on Digital DJ Tips.